Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be life is what you make of it. Sometimes in life, shit just happens that you have absolutely no control over. Sometimes the circumstances of your life just totally sucks, and you wish you were somewhere other than where you are. But the problem is that when we think that way, when we want life or reality to be other than it is, when something bad happens to us, we suffer. And the reason we suffer is because we have become attached to the way things used to be instead of accepting that they are the way that they are. And I've got a couple of quotes that I want to share with you before I get into the email of this guy who's been through a lot of fucking shit in his life. And one of the things I learned long ago is that no matter how bad you think life is or how much it sucks for you right now, or sometimes you just feel like it sucks, there's always someone somewhere else in the world who's got it 1,000 times worse than you. I was reading a statistic last night that there are, if you're watching this, you are better off than 1.6 billion other people in this world. There's 1.6 billion people in this world that don't even have electricity or running water. I mean, there's plenty of people, when you think about it, in Africa that are sitting in the desert, literally living hand to mouth, wiping their ass with their hands, and are starving to death, maybe because they've been displaced by wars, or they don't belong to the right ethnic tribe or whatever, and they're just being slaughtered for who they are. And they have no one is going to come save them, no one is going to help them. And so if you're watching this, you're a lot better off than those kinds of people that are suffering tremendously. Look at all the wars that are going on around the world. And so I've got an email here from a guy, and two quotes I want to share with you before I get into it. One of them is from Reggie White, who was one of the greatest football players to ever play. If you don't know who he is, Google his name, Reggie White. He said, God places the heaviest burden on those who can carry its weight. And there's another one from Helen Keller. She said, and Helen Keller, she was blind and deaf. I mean, can you imagine growing up, you're blind and deaf and you just can't communicate with people? But she learned because of a dedicated teacher that taught her how to communicate. And she said, we could never learn to be brave and patient if there were only joys in the world. And so this email this guy sent me, he says, I was paralyzed in an accident 5 years ago from high up in my chest down, and I have now come to the point where I've lost all will and desire to do anything, and I can't seem to motivate myself anymore. I was like you, and I had your passion for life before. I was 22, focused on personal growth, and had just opened my own business and graduated from college only a few months before I got injured. I was a healthy eater, and I took care of myself, and I was motivated and ranked the #1 sales rep in the company that I worked for a few years before I launched my own company. I had it all, but I lost it all, and now I have no desire to try, even though I want to be well. Truth be told, I know and believe I could walk again if I could get myself motivated to even try to do what I know I ought to, as well as get myself out of the environment that I'm in. I know what I should be doing, but I can't bring myself to do it. Even just simple things like eating the right food, I no longer do, even though I wish I did. I feel like I need a catalyst or something to get me on fire to do what I need, but I have nothing like that, and I have no more internal strength to do this. Well, you have to have something that is emotionally compelling for your future. Obviously, you had the rug pulled out from underneath you. And I give an example. I had a buddy of mine that I used to work with years ago. This is probably going back 15, 18 years ago when I was in real estate, and he was a quadriplegic. And so his hands were like this. He could move his hands, but when he needed to type on the computer, he was like this all the time. He was like hunting and pecking. But he always had a smile. He had a good attitude. We used to go out and party together, and he would always obviously have his wheelchair. He drove. He was an amazing guy. And the story of how he got paralyzed, which I'm going to tell you in a second, was pretty crazy. But he even drove. And he had because obviously his legs didn't work, so he couldn't use the pedals, and so he had these these little bars that were underneath his steering wheel. One gave it gas, the other one was for the brake. And on his steering wheel, he had this knob, because his hands were all scrunched up, that he could grab onto and turn. He used to drive, and we used to go look at houses together. We were buying and selling foreclosure properties. We both worked at the same company, and he always had a smile. He had a great attitude. He got laid every once in a while, and he partied and he enjoyed his fucking life. And how he got paralyzed was he actually used to be in the Coast Guard. And turns out he was having an affair with his best friend's wife. And so one night, he and his best friend's wife were out driving around, and both of them were shit-faced, and he laid down in the back seat and passed out, and so she was driving. And so I guess at some point, they went through a red light or a stop sign, I can't remember what it was, and another drunk driver ran into them and T-boned them. And so he was laying down in the back seat, and so when the car hit, he slid right into the door, and it basically snapped his back, and so he was paralyzed from the chest down. And so he spent, the first year or two that it had happened, obviously he's understandably pissed off and upset, and that things had gone the way that they had gone. But eventually he accepted. He just said, hey, this is the way I am. I can't fucking do anything about it. And the thing was that he didn't have the money to afford the therapy and to do physical therapy to help him regain some of the motor skills that he had lost. And since he didn't have the money to afford to get the physical therapy that could help him walk again, he just accepted that his life was the way it is. And he was amazing. He inspired me. I used to have a ball hanging out with this guy because I looked at him. I thought, you know what? Thank God that I'm not like that. Thank God that I've always been healthy and I haven't had to go through things like that. But the way I look at life, and when you look at things from a spiritual perspective, I believe that we choose our parents. I believe that everything that happens to us in life happens for a reason. And the reason that you're a cripple now and that you've lost the use of a large portion of your body is because it's supposed to be that way. It was meant to happen. And just like the quote from Reggie White, he said, God places the heaviest burden on those who can carry its weight. And so if you choose your parents and you choose your life, and when you study quantum physics and you realize this whole reality that we're looking around that we see as the real world around us is blinking into and out of existence 60 million times a second, and that there's a consciousness that's holding this whole universe together that keeps all the molecules and particles from flying apart that are our bodies, you can't help but wonder. I mean, I've learned in life that people come along at certain times. Certain women come along in your life when you're open to it and you're ready for it to have a great relationship with them. Everybody that comes into your life has a gift for you, and you've got a gift for them. And anything that happens in your life, because, I mean, sometimes things happen that there's just, like my buddy, I mean, he was out getting laid. He was fucking his best friend's girlfriend, and here, people could say, well, that's fucking karma. That son of a bitch got what he deserved. He was fucking his best friend's wife. Well, I mean, yeah, you could say that, but, I mean, at the end of the day, he turned that into a gift, just like all the shit that's happened to me in my life. I mean, I wish my mother wasn't a psychotic schizophrenic. I wish she hadn't flipped out and gone crazy when I was 19 years old, and because she saw demons and spirits and all kinds of just weird, crazy stuff. I mean, my mother's been dead for 14 years now. I wish she was still alive. I wish I could have a relationship with her. But, I mean, shit fucking happens. I wish I'd have grown up in a happy household where mom and dad were good parents and they knew how to love us and they knew how to raise us instead of being a completely fucked up, dysfunctional household that I came from. But I didn't let that ruin my life. I didn't let that define who I was going to become in the future. I decided to grow a set of balls and take personal responsibility for my own life and move in the direction that I wanted to move in, despite what my past was. And so all the things that have happened in my life, I look at it as a gift, because I wouldn't be able to share the things that I share with you and learn the things that I've learned and suffered through in my own life. So as you're sitting here watching this video, or all of my other videos and articles that are on my website or my ebook, to where you can learn from my mistakes, learn from the fucked upness that is my family background. I overcame it, and if I overcame it, there's nothing special about me. I'm just another dude. But if you apply the things that I teach, you'll get the same kinds of results. I got a buddy of mine who got blown up in Iraq. He lost an eye. He spent 1.5 years in Walter Reed Medical Center recovering. And when he's at the beach, he's got his shirt off. His chest it's fucked up. It's like one nipple is higher than the other. I mean, physically he's fucked up. He's got a traumatic brain injury. which it makes it very hard for him to concentrate and to think and to work. And so there's a lot of times where he just can't simply work because of the brain injury that he has. But he doesn't let that, I mean, he's got a great attitude towards it. He's like, hey, I fucking killed 19 of those motherfuckers before they blew my ass up. I mean, that's his attitude towards it. The one thing that does get under his skin is when he's talking to people and they don't appreciate what he's given up for them because he served in the military. But other than that, he enjoys his life. He goes to the beach, he parties, he has fun, he gets laid, he hooks up, he works when he can. And that's his attitude towards life. I mean, because like I said, you can't always change necessarily what happens in your life. You can't change the circumstances immediately all the time. The only thing you really have control over is what things mean to you. And, you know, I shared this recently. I had a buddy of mine that was a Navy SEAL. He was killed 20 years ago. He wasn't killed in combat. He was killed in a car accident. And he was the kindest, nicest guy I've ever met in my life. He was the most humble. He was the nicest person. And he was 22 years old. And he's been dead for 20 years now. And it sucks. And I was talking to his brother recently, and we were reminiscing about him. And he knew from the time he was 12 years old that he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. That's all he ever wanted to be. That's all he thought about. And he accomplished that purpose. And coming from a military background, both my grandfather served in World War II. My dad and my uncle served in Vietnam. I've had countless other friends and family that have served. When you know enough people that have been in combat and they've lost a lot of friends, they've lost a lot of buddies, they've gotten killed or maimed and seen a lot of horrible things, it's always those guys like my friend who was a SEAL. It's always a guy that's got the perfect life and he's got everything going for him. It's always that guy that gets killed. And the way I look at it and the way other friends and family members that have survived combat and traumatic experiences, I mean, the way you look at it is if you're still here, it means you got work to do. And so you got a choice. You can be upset about the condition that you're in, or you can use it as a tool. You can say this is a gift and ask because the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of the questions that you consistently ask yourself. And so you can ask yourself positive, empowering questions like, what's good about this? How can I use this? I mean, because at the end of the day, you have to accept that you are the way you are. And the longer you are mad and bitter and pissed off about it, the longer you're going to suffer for. And life's too fucking short. I mean, my dad lives in a 55 and up community, and it's like, I see all these fat, old people, they're all walking around with walkers, and they sit on the couch all day, and they eat shit. And they sit on the couch, and so their muscles atrophy, and they wonder why they're miserable, and they're fucking sick all the time, they can barely move around. You know, they fall and they hit the ground, they break their hip. I mean, it's a miserable existence. And you're not living in the dirt somewhere in Africa with no electricity and no food and under constant fear that someone's going to come and kill you and your whole family and everybody that you care about. I mean, you got to think about that. And so the way to move forward is you got to find something emotionally compelling for you. You have to do something with your life that you love, that excites you, that's emotionally compelling to you. Because if you don't have something that's emotionally compelling, you won't do what it takes to move forward in life. If you do something that you love, if you start following your heart and your curiosity and your intuition and you start moving in the right direction or moving in the direction that things feel right, eventually life will get better for you. There's another guy I know, his name is Sean Stevenson, I think is his name. He's like this tall. He's about like 2.5, 3 feet tall. He can't use his legs. He's been in a wheelchair his whole life. He's got a giant head. And his tongue is too big for his mouth. It's like when he talks, it kind of gets in the way. He just got married recently. He's an amazing guy. You look his name up, Sean Stevenson. He's amazing. He's an amazing public speaker. And you're not as fucked up physically as he is, but he has a great attitude. And he's just married. I saw a picture. He got married recently in the past few months. He married a beautiful woman. And she's totally healthy. She's not fucked up in any way. And so, like, when they go to have sex, she's got to pick him up out of the wheelchair and put him on the bed. She's got to pretty much take his clothes off and do everything for him. I mean, you're not that fucked up. Your life isn't that bad. My point being is there's always somebody that's going to have it worse than you.